Hey guys, Deslater Magic here, and I just wanted to shine a little light on a topic that apparently a lot of people do get, but some people still don't understand. I've only been playing Magic for like 3 or 4 years or something like that, but I've noticed a pattern. They have completely wide open sets where you could build absolutely anything, and as long as it was, a good deck mathematically and strategically, you'd probably have a chance of winning. Some decks are obviously better than others, but you could get creative. You could come up with an idea and reasonably bring it to F&M and win, which that actually always is true if people don't net deck at your LGS. If people just constantly bring weird stuff they came up with, then, well, it brings the power level down and then everybody has more fun, but that's a completely different topic. As far as the set itself, when it comes to the absolute top decks, as far as people see them, because obviously, the top decks are not the top decks. There's just no way to determine what that is in such a short amount of time with such a small number of people attending the professional level tournaments. And then also the fact that you could be, running the best deck, but not be the best player. And guess what? You're not making it to the top 8. So nobody's going to see your deck. Nobody's going to build it, even though it's the best deck. So when I say the top couple decks, I mean the ones that everybody's copies, not the actual best decks, because, there's no way to find out what they are. So when the, quote, best decks have been determined, the higher the number, the more the people like the set. That's pretty much universal. People hate it, and I mean hate it, in Commander, Modern, or Standard when one deck just dominates. I mean, they hate it. Just look at Eldrazi. Nobody was like, oh, cool, a fun new deck. This is different. And honestly, it wasn't even that expensive to build. I'm going to play Eldrazi because I'm sick of playing Affinity. This is great. Oh, hell no. People were like, mirror match, mirror match, mirror match. Nothing but mirror matches. This is stupid and boring. And keep in mind, you don't go to the GPs and the Pro Tours for fun. In fact, I think at that time you didn't go to the Pro Tours to play Modern, so I'll say just the GPs. I mean, you're there to do well and win prizes and money. I mean, some people go for fun. Actually, probably a lot of people do, but that's not really the idea when people think of GPs. They're like ultra competitive, super serious. So for them to be complaining, oh, it's not fun to have 65% Eldrazi decks and basically one or two different forms of the Eldrazi deck, and that was it. That was just dominating the tournament. But people did complain about it. They didn't care if they were there just to win money and, oh, good, they found a new top deck, so now level playing field, hopefully they can outdraw the opponent and outluck them or maybe outplay them on play decisions. I mean, it honestly would have turned into poker if you think about it. Everybody's playing with the same deck in poker. It comes down to just luck. And then if it comes down to just luck, why do the same people keep winning? Well, skill. So that's why, let's say 100% of people would have brought the Eldrazi deck. Everybody should have been fine with that, right? Because it's a perfectly level playing field. And if you are the best player, you're the best at playing, and you're going to make the best decisions at the right time, you're going to win. Now, unfortunately, I think MTG might be a little bit more luck heavy than poker, although it's kind of hard to say. It certainly is lower volume because you get dealt new cards every single hand in poker, so that probably has something to do with it. So yeah, I would say that actually probably does make it more luck intensive. But a lot of people, though, don't realize that if there's only 5 or 6 big decks in Modern, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, you're not going to see as many mirror matches, so at least you won't be bored. But, I mean, honestly, I'd be bored at a Modern tournament. It's the same 5 decks. Might as well be the same 1 deck. I don't care. It's just stupid as hell. So, with the opinions of players in massive amounts, uniqueness is good. They like high variety. They do not like the same things. In fact, ignore the Eldrazi, back up a couple months. What were people complaining about in Modern? Besides individual cards, they were saying we're sick of playing and playing against the same decks, the same archetypes, the same stupid cards in the same mechanics. So people don't like that. Now, you go towards Standard, and people still like a high variety because, I always use the same examples, but why not? I mean, it's not like stuff changes that often, so I kind of have to. Concept arc here. Okay, when Dragons launched, you were running one of 2 decks. If you were not running one of 2 decks, you were doing something called losing. It was just stupid, the power of those decks. It was completely out of control. I would say it was probably close to as bad as the situation prior to the ban that just happened. I mean, it was pretty hard to beat the Emrakul decks. It was pretty hard to beat Delirium, and honestly, it was pretty hard to beat Red-White Vehicles, and that was like a secondary deck. I'm trying to think what the hell the other one was. Oh yeah, Control, Blue-White Control. That, you just couldn't beat that. That was like Dragons of Tarkir block right there. I mean, Esper Control, you couldn't beat it. There was nothing that could beat it. There was no combination of cards in existence that stood a chance in hell against that deck, except for the other OP as hell deck, which was pretty much just Jeskai. Jeskai Ascendancy was a mistake of a card, and it was a mistake of a deck. It was a mistake of a block. So people didn't like it. I mean, what they were really complaining about at the time was the $1,000 price tag on a standard deck. That was the number one complaint I heard. But the second complaint was just no variety. Just these top decks now that Dragons was out, and it was the full block, full-blown, with the Dragon Command cards, the Dragon Lords, everything. It was exactly how the block was intended to be designed, full blast. Now, when it was just cons, it was kind of up in the air. Not many people actually played it. It was a bit of a mix. And then it just got worse. So Fate Reforged came out, and people were like, oh, cool, I'm playing Ugin. And there was all this synergy, and it got really annoying. And then Dragons came out, and it was just nothing but 3-color. 3-color, you were playing the cons colors, and that was that. That was the end of it. So that was annoying as hell because, in my opinion, back then, it was narrowed down to 2 decks. I mean, at least from what I saw. If you think I don't follow the top net decks now, you should have seen me back then, because that was year and a half, 2 years ago. I couldn't care less. All I cared about was what the 50 people brought to F&M, and since they were net deckers, I assumed that was what was going on at the tournament, but couldn't be bothered to look it up. So Wizards noticed that people aren't happy. It goes back to that poll that they took, and they asked people, what do you think of Standard and why? Well, you guys know what they thought of Standard. It was a low rating, and the why was you can't beat the top decks. You have to run the top decks, and that's boring because people like to build their own decks. Do I even have to say it really at this point? Apparently, according to my comment section, I do have to say it. Magic is about building decks. I don't know if you noticed that or not. I mean, let's see, Sealed, you have to build a deck. Draft, you have to build a deck. Constructed, you pretty much have to build a deck unless you get a net deck. And then Modern, I mean, if you want to play competitively, you pretty much have to copy one of the top decks, because those have been well established and mathematically proven after this much time. But then again, with such a high card pool, I mean, people are coming up with really wacky stuff like, Eldrazi, for example. And yes, they are correct. Those are powerful decks that can compete on a tier 1 level. And even Black Devotion, I don't know if you guys have played against that. That is an up-and-coming, super hardcore deck, and that's Theros level stuff. So you can't really say that you don't build decks in Modern, because there's 15,000 cards to choose from or something like that. So yeah, you can build a deck in Modern. And then Commander, I mean, that's build it yourself right there. That is 100% build it yourself. I don't even know why they make pre-made stuff instead of just selling miniature booster packs of 3 commanders from a pool of 30, and they literally just contain the commanders. I mean, that would be, I don't know, a little bit smarter, a little bit nicer. Then again, it's kind of a pain to get 99 unique cards, so I kind of get it. And let's talk about Commander for a second. Why do people love Commander? Ultra high variety, kind of low power level, and it's sort of suited to multiplayer too, so that's unrelated, but it's variety. It's all about variety. People like variety. Even in Modern, if there's some exciting new deck and it's, tier 1.5, so at least you could reasonably maybe win a tournament with it, people are going to bring it just because they're so sick of everything else. So the number one goal from Wizards, and I'm not just making this up, it's not just because of all the evidence I stated, they have literally said this in interviews, they like high varieties of decks. They do not want just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 different decks to dominate. They want a whole bunch of decks to be competitive. And I remember times where you could look at certain tournament results and all of the top 8 were different decks. I mean, I think it happened once that I remember, otherwise 6 or 7 unique decks. I've seen that quite a bit. Well, that's the net decking scene, but it does imply that people could build anything themselves. Even at the standard, casual F&M level. It does translate on down to mean that nothing's just dominating and everything's kind of even, so just pick whatever you want and have fun with it. So it's your preference, it's up to you, and you're in control. And that's kind of 50% of it. So 50% is, I don't want to be bored seeing the same stupid decks. I don't want to play against the same decks. I like variety because that's just how the human brain works. And then the other 50% is, I want to be in control. I want to build what I want to build. If I want to build a Madness deck, it better work. Like, I better be able to do that. I can't just say, oh, Madness, that looks like fun, and then go 0-5 every single FNM. No, that wouldn't be all that fun. Now, if you just want to build a Squirrels deck and then you get stomped with it, that's because you built a Squirrel deck, honestly, so it doesn't always work. But I mean, within reason, you look at something and say, that looks powerful, I want to try that. You should be able to do that, to bring that to a tournament and at least go like 2-3, 3-2. That is when people are the happiest. So the best example of that was probably Theros, I would say, when Devotion decks were big. Now, people have told me that at LGSs other than mine, people were just running the same 2 or 3 decks, but I didn't see that. I mean, everybody was like, oh, Devotion, and there was Black Devotion, Green Devotion, Hybrid Mixed Devotion, there was Blue Devotion, that's what I ran. Black Devotion with the Gray Merchant, I mean, that's where the Modern deck came from. I mean, just Devotion as a mechanic implies that there's at least 5 decks, and then there was all different ways to sub-build them. I mean, how aggressive did you want to rely on Devotion? Or was it just half of your deck, and coincidentally the permanents were black and maybe double black or triple black? Actually, don't think there was any triple black. I'll tell you what, there was a hell of a lot of triple blue, though. Oh, yes, I built that. I actually had a blue Devotion deck with Master of Waves that was, I'm told, very similar to a top tournament deck, except that I ran probably 3 or 4 cards different and the existing cards in a completely different amount. I did run the Thassa God card, obviously, because who wouldn't? But then if Unblockable failed, or if I didn't want them to, I don't know, be able to tap or something like that, I ran the Elemental that was flying or whatever, and every time he swung, he tapped every single creature that the opponent owned. Oh, that was a good deck. I would say that was better than the list that everybody else was playing. I think I dropped the cloning cards. I just ignored them and let Master of Waves do his thing if he showed up. I think that's where mine was different. So you could pick a deck archetype, but then you could really customize it yourself. You could pick a color, a strategy, mechanic, whatever, and make it work. In fact, people were going up against Devotion decks with Bestow decks and enchantment decks and go fetch decks, because you could go fetch enchantments. And Pro Colors was kind of a thing back then. So, I mean, you could just build anything and you stood a pretty good chance. And I won so many matches at FNM. People were happy. People really liked it. A lot of super competitive people are looking back saying they didn't like it because, well, what do? They look at the top decks, and the less of them, the less happy they are because they have less options. Well, you'd have a lot more options if you didn't net deck. Let me just throw that one out there. I mean, if you picked the, quote, top deck or whatever, you're probably 5% above what everybody else is playing who knows anything about deck building. Like, it was that level and that wide open. So fast forward to Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon. That one was designed in a way that I didn't like. It was like pretend forced level playing field. You picked a tribal and you went with it. That's pretty much how it worked. I mean, people put together some really weird stuff, but in general, people are like, okay, I'm running werewolves. I'm running black-red vampires, maybe madness. I'm running red-burn madness. Okay, he's running blue-white spirits. And they were all close on power. I mean, it was clear which ones were more powerful, but they were close. You could reasonably take a werewolf deck and just run over a vampire deck with it. If you pull the right cards, it was that close in power that it was doable on a regular basis. You could beat the other person just because of a better mulligan decision. Like, that's how close it was. Now, were they stomping Eldrazi? Yes, because all the Eldrazi decks were ramp decks. It took a while. You had to generate the Scions, you had to pull cards in the right order, and you had to get to a large amount of mana, then go fetch or scry to or already have the Eldrazi in your hand. So the decks were just universally across the board faster. Even blue-white spirits were faster, and then they had the control to just stop the Eldrazi from being summoned. So everybody abandoned those decks, and I think the tribal synergy was a little bit better than allies. So everybody moved to those, which was kind of bad. I mean, they obviously did it, like I said in the last video, to sell sets. If the set that comes out, or the block that comes out, is not more powerful than the one before it, nobody's going to buy it. And I mean nobody. So they did narrow the field, which is bad for player happiness, but it's good for sales, so I get that. But they did try to make all the tribals very, very, very level. Oh, and White Humans, oh my god, I always forget to mention that one. White Humans was a little powerful back then. Some of the landfall decks were still fast enough too. I mean, those things like the red-green landfall, that would really stomp people. So you did have a lot of options, but it was so forced. I mean, you had your pick of what you wanted to play, but the deck was basically made for you because there's like, what, 12 werewolves, 12 spirits, 12 humans. You had no cards to choose from. The pool was just pathetic. And it basically turned into Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it's like, I'm playing dragons. I literally cannot name another tribal from Yu-Gi-Oh! I'll say wizards. Wizards has to be a thing, right? I don't know. All I know is my friends told me Yu-Gi-Oh! Is super tribal. You're like playing dragons. It's clear which dragons are the most powerful. You could tweak it a little bit for, your preference, but that's it. You just pick one of their archetypes and do it and buy the really obvious cards. So that's what they turned Magic into with the Shadows block. And it was still fun to play. It was just kind of dull from a deck building standpoint. But the number of unique powerful decks was higher than it was a couple weeks ago. So fast forward to Kaladesh, 3 decks again, just 3 decks. They stomped everything. They were like turn 4 Emrakul. I mean, how the hell do you beat a turn 4 Emrakul? You have to either build specifically around it or get utterly stomped by it. Delirium was designed to be inherently unreliable, and yet as soon as Kaladesh came out, with Smuggler's Copter especially, you could just toss one card into the graveyard arbitrarily every single turn. I mean, that was just stupid. The deck worked way too well. It was too fast, too consistent for a mechanic that's powerful, but its downside is that it could be inconsistent and you might not get the cards into the graveyard. Well, no, you would get the cards into the graveyard 99% of the time. So they let the power level go absolutely nuts, but I made a video about this. Kaladesh was wide open. I mean, Panharmonicon, it works with anything. That works with stuff from BFZ. I mean, there was just, even with Aether Revolt, dump counters onto creatures. Doesn't even matter what color. In fact, most of the counter manipulation is actually colorless. And they did that on purpose. Well, 1, because it's an artifact set, and 2, so that you could up the deck variety. You could go red counters, you could go green counters. You could go white flying counters. I think that might be a little something right there. Oh, and then you could throw in artifacts into anything. So they tried to up the variety because, artifacts, you could say, oh, that's a cool card. That works with mine, and throw it into any of the 5 colors. So they purposely made universal cards like Panharmonicon, and I could probably name 10 more that just work with anything in the set. I mean, it's just like for each creature or anything that's labeled an artifact, do this. So I like wide open, except what's wrong with Aether Revolt right now? Well, shocker, infinite combo on turn 4. Oops. So needless to say, everybody's going to be playing that, plus my or anybody else's version of the Blues Clues deck where you get out 8 clues and win the game. That one looks pretty hard to stop because you're playing just mono blue control. Maybe even put white in there, but either way, you're going to be able to stop basically everything people throw at you and just win on like turn, 6, 7, 8, something like that. So that deck's going to be heavily played, and I don't know, probably still some kind of Marvel free cast thing. They just are going to replace Emrakul with Ulamog and maybe throw in like a Colossus because that's almost as consistent and powerful. I mean, not really as Emrakul, but it's doable. It's game winning good. So that's a problem. We're back to, 3 decks. And they tried to power down the top decks with Smuggler's Copter being banned because it just made everything too consistent. You might as well just start with a ley line or an emblem on the field that says you draw 2 cards every turn. I mean, what would that do to the format? It's so toxic. You can't just give people double the amount of cards plus other passive scry and draw cards that are dirt cheap, and that also give them like 1 cost ambush boost and stuff and hexproof saving. And it was just too good. The cards are too good. So that's the one thing that backfires when you let people build anything. If you make the cards universally wide open and say, here, everybody, go nuts, the result of that might be that everybody goes nuts and builds something completely monstrous that R&D didn't have the time or skill to come up with. And yes, 10 million players are going to beat a room full of 20 people? So unfortunately, as I would prefer the wide open sets because it's just better for me. I love deck building, and then I can build anything. I could put absolutely any cards together and see if it works, test it out. Plus it sells more cards because if a deck, fails miserably, I'm going to rebuild it. It's not just, I bought my werewolves, I'm good, done, that's it. Not buying any more. What would I possibly put in the deck other than a werewolf? So from a sales perspective, it's pretty smart. But they're going to need to fix things with bans, and that's what it comes down to, and that's why they did what they did. People like variety, and when the variety goes away, they ban something. So look at, let's just back up. People are like, oh, this is unprecedented. 50 to 65% Eldrazi decks in a Modern tournament. Boom, banned. It's gone. When the deck variety in any format gets too toxically small and people start to get pissed off and complaining about it's just the same old, and the card prices obviously as a result go through the roof because everybody wants the same couple cards, it's kind of like a pendulum. There's a pendulum swinging, and it's swinging back and forth, got a big old blade on it, and whenever a deck sticks its head up a little bit too high, boom, it gets decapitated by the Wizards' ban hammer. It's a pendulum and a hammer with a blade on it. It's quite the metaphor there. And that's just the way things have to be, okay? Everybody's like, oh, I lost so much value. Well, first of all, stop freaking net decking and you won't lose as much value. I mean, everybody and their grandma was running Smuggler's Copter, so that one burned. I wasn't actually, by the way. But if you were running the Emrakul deck and you were just sitting there, mulliganing, oh, look, I got the combo I need. Yay, win on turn 5. Screw you. You're a terrible person. I hate you. Everybody else hates you. You shouldn't have been playing that deck. It's like, yeah, you like winning, but that's a dick move. You knew damn well the deck was too powerful. And unless everybody else was playing it, so you just had to bring up the power level, there's no forgiving that. There's nothing about that that's acceptable, okay? You should have seen it coming, except for the fact that there hasn't been a card ban in like 5 years. Oh, in Standard, I meant. Yeah, they've banned a couple things in the last 5 years. So just keep in mind for the future, Wizards is sick of people getting sick of Standard because they need to sell Standard. They figured out really damn quick why people weren't showing up to F&M. They took a poll. They've taken all sorts of marketing research. They've looked at forums. They've looked at, Reddit. They follow what people are commenting on Facebook and tweeting them. They put it all together and said, okay, lack of variety. That's the number one complaint. Let's fix it. Not, oh, let's do better in the future. Let's try to design something, with higher variety, because that's what they've been trying to do all along. That's what they've always been trying to do. If they fail at it, they need to fix it. Either that or the game's going to lose 20% of their players because people will just get so sick of it. So I hope that shines a little bit more light on why they design sets the way they do, why mechanics are designed the way they do, why they shifted so drastically from super templated to super wide open between Shadows and Kaladesh. And obviously it explains the ban. I mean, when this strategy fails, when they give you the tools to build anything, and then I'd say people misuse them, but come on, you're going to build the most powerful deck you possibly can. That's a given. So when somebody comes up with something that's a little bit too broken, they slice it. They take the scythe. It's a scythe now. It's a scythe hammer pendulum bladed. It's a flying UFO. I don't know. It's a frisbee with butter knives on it. I don't know. The metaphor fell apart a long time ago, but whatever it is, it's going to hit the top decks and chop them. That is the only way to make a healthy Standard, and if it pisses some people off, whatever, you're going to step on some toes, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet, or whatever the hell the saying is, you get it. So people getting all butthurt and making stupid, clueless, ignorant videos with titles like, oh, I'm so concerned about the ban. What does the ban mean? This is so dangerous for the future. Oh, it's so unpredictable. No, it's exactly what Wizards' policy has been. They just decided to get their balls out of their wife's purse and actually ban something and actually step up and say, we're going to fix this. We made a mistake. This card's too powerful. There it's fixed. Rip the Band-Aid off. Piss the people off we're going to piss off. And the other 95% of people are happy. Okay, that's just the reality of it. It's not, oh, they could ban my deck at any time. I'm going to go play Hearthstone. Yeah, because that never has people whining about a meta shift. That ain't the game for you if that's what you're complaining about, okay? So I 100% support the fact that Wizards at least attempted to fix it, and for the most part did fix it. Obviously, I think they should have banned Marvel instead of Emrakul. I've heard more convincing arguments that make it at least a closer decision in my mind, so I get it, whatever. I mean, they got close enough and they fixed the problem. Those decks are gone. Their power level is chopped by 20-30%. Now people can continue to build whatever they want creatively within reason and actually compete with it. I mean, my Gravity Bomb deck swept F&M twice, and then I started to just not be able to win crap with it. That's how bad the power level got as the toxic net decks came out. I started to go like 2-2, and then I think I even went like 1-3 with it at 1 week, and I'm like, what the hell? But we were going up against almost nothing but blue-white spirits, so they were on par or superior to my mono control with a 2-color control, obviously. And they were just too damn hard to beat because if too many of my tap effects get countered, they're just going to hit me in the air quicker than I can hit them in the air. And they know to counter my bombs. They know what's coming. So the deck was strong until something just impossible to beat came out, and Wizards recognized it and said, no, take your Reflector Mage and shove it. And honestly, just losing Reflector Mage, I could probably now resume winning with my Gravity Bomb deck. Like, that's how drastic it was. So I completely support what they did. The only problem is Aether Revolt just made it worse. There's going to be an infinite combo deck, a win with 8 permanents deck, and whatever the hell I said was the third one, and that's about it. Red-white vehicles, definitely with free crewing permanently. Yeah, that's going to be a deck. Also, it looks like counters is probably going to be a deck, so that's 4. But still, the power level of those, oh my god, like just from the deck lists I've seen thrown around, they are scary as hell. They're probably going to have to ban something else, and it's going to have to be an emergency ban. Now, will they resort to that? I don't think they will. I think they're like, we've hit our maximum level of unpredictable surprises that piss people off. Let's give them some time to adjust. They can sit there and rot with the same 4 stupid decks until Amonkhet comes out, and then maybe at that point they'll ban something. I don't actually know when their ban cycle is. I don't know if it's like once per set release, or I thought it was once per block release. But then again, they changed when the cycle cycled, then they changed when the ban list was. So I don't think anybody even knows what the ban list is, like the cycle is right now. I think theoretically it's once per year, but nothing cycled out when Aether Revolt came out, and they just banned some cards, and nobody called that an emergency ban or out of cycle. So who the hell knows? But I mean, they'd have to release Aether Revolt and then ban something before Amonkhet comes out. Okay, that's an out of cycle ban. So I don't think they'll do that, and that's why Aether Revolt looks so unplayable right now. You just, no matter what you're playing, you won't stand a chance against the top decks. It's just going to return to that, unfortunately. The only thing that can compete with an environment like that from a deck building standpoint, if you want to still continue to rogue deck, is the old hold them with one hand, punch them with the other decks, which is, approximately 16 control cards, 24 non-control cards, well, 22 usually. And you just try to hold off their stupid little gimmicky combo. You know what's in the deck. You've seen the deck list. Just stop their bombs and stop their key components. So you're holding them with one hand while you're punching them with your other hand like a Gyros Masterpiece. Man, it's 7-7 in the air. That ain't no joke. So blue and white control cards, black-white control, kill, removal, exile, those are going to be pretty hot. And then, honestly, blue, white, and black all have pretty good creatures right now. Well, black to a lesser extent. So building a hold 'em and punch 'em deck is probably going to be a reasonable strategy. And, removal cards that are the best in standard usually have a bit of a price tag. But then again, with the way they're printing cards right now and the way they're printing standard sets, it's really not gonna stay that way. Like, even Fatal Push or whatever is like $4 right now. I mean, some cards that people were expecting to be $10 to $15, which, I mean, okay, for the rarity, no way in hell with that card. But, everything else, it's like, you just wait a little bit and it's going to go down. I think the days of like Thoughtseize being like $30 or whatever, I think that's over. I mean, Anguished Unmaking couldn't even maintain its price. I mean, it's just you wait a couple weeks and just everything's a couple dollars. And that is more than fine with me because I sell all my singles in the first 72 hours usually. And then after that, I build decks. So hooray, that's fine with me. I certainly won't ever be complaining about that. I mean, cards going down over time. People are like, oh, but I disassembled my deck to build a new one, which usually a net deck, and I can't sell my cards for anything because they're all $2 now. Literally the same people that are like, I want to be able to keep my deck for 1 to 2 years. I like the 1-year rotation. You know damn well that's not what you're doing. Every time a new deck comes out, you build it. So anyway, that's my complete overview. So if you watch this whole video, you are now immensely smarter than even most of the MTG YouTubers out there. At least when it comes to why Wizards designs sets the way they do, why they banned things, just everything. Like, if you had a why question about anything that's been going on the last 2 or 3 years, this video was your answer. In fact, here, let me cast a spell that ups your wisdom stat by +1. I'd play some kind of sound effect if I had any, but, can't be bothered. Hooray! You now qualify as a cleric and a paladin. We're in D&D land now. But for real, you got some serious like feng shui, chi, zen crap going on when it comes to understanding what's going on with Wizards products. So Hooray for you. So definitely share this video with anybody else that might find it interesting and likes podcasts with Command and Conquer Generals in the back. Oh, and for those of you who are like, you're not very good at Command and Conquer Generals. Okay, first of all, I haven't played it in like 8 years. Secondly, I'm not trying. I'm watching Netflix and YouTube while I'm playing, okay? I'm not like, oh, this is Desolator Gaming, which by the way is my other channel. I'm going to show off my amazing skills and I'm going to do as well as I can, like a speed run to just demolish the opponents in 10 minutes. No, I'm playing casually and watching some dumb horror movie or something. I'm not even paying attention half the time. In fact, I hatched 2 Pokemon while filming the video for this video. I also caught like 15 of them. I just caught the last Bellsprout. I got 100 candy now. I'm about to hatch the most monstrous Victory Bell in the history of Victory Bells. Oh, and I'm a level 25 trainer that has severe knee problems that prevents me from walking even like a half mile. And I don't have a smartphone or a data plan, so I only play on Wi-Fi. And it's winter. I hate to quote that stupid, arrogant model chick on Twitter, but what's your excuse? Anyway, enough about Pokemon Go, enough about the set design. I think you guys got the gist of it. But like I said, definitely drop a like on the video if it helped you out, because that helps me out. And definitely share this video with anybody that you know that plays Magic and they I don't know, could use this information or would find it interesting. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next video.